Hello, and welcome to the third podcast for Young Guns. My name is Tyler.
And my name is Louie, and today we got a special playoff episode where we're going to be looking at all the matchups as well as key players that we're going to look to see if they contribute or not.
Let's first take a look at the West Series, starting off with Flames against the Avalanche. We now know that they are up 1-0 for the Flames, so Louie, tell us your thoughts.
Honestly, I don't think that the Avalanche are going to go down without a fight. That being said, there's just so much scoring depth on Calgary that I don't think that the Avalanche can weather the storm. And to add on to that, I don't think that the one-line team that is the Avalanche can solve the strong defense that is the Calgary Flames. Like, you look at their defensive core, I think that they're good enough to shut down that one line and effectively neutralize the Avalanche's scoring.
Also, with that amazing defense, we saw in the first game that Mike Smith came through with a shutout for the playoffs. I'm thinking about the Avalanche's goalie, Semyon Varlamov, who actually did not play the first game. So you think about a team that's currently with only like one good offensive line, shaking defense, and they don't have their starter who's like healthy and at his top of his game. So I don't think that Avalanche have a chance at all. Like, it might end like 4-1 at the most, but I'm thinking like a sweep. That could potentially be the only sweep.
I mean, I have to agree with you that the Avalanche don't have a chance, but at the same time, I'm thinking down the road for the Calgary Flames, they're starting Mike Smith, and I really don't believe in Mike Smith. And I know that people will talk about his playoff record and how he's got a strong save percentage in the playoffs, but the last time he made the playoffs was years ago. So I don't think that you can look at, 2013 or whatever it was and say this is the same Mike Smith. I think that they would be smarter starting Riddick and getting, steady performances, maybe not, shutouts every night, but all you need if you're the Calgary Flames is league average goaltending, because you're going to score a lot. Mike Smith, if he craps the bet, he's going to lose your games.
Down the road, that actually could represent a problem for them, but as of now, I don't think it's something they should be concerned with, as he got a shutout and they actually put up 4 goals. So even if Mike Smith gets a lot of goals, I don't think that's going to be a big problem, because the Flames can score easily 5 goals a game. Like, they've shown that during the season. And in terms of Avalanche, I just think it's important to point out that the Flames, I put them in my bracket for being in the Stanley Cup final. So I don't see the Avalanche being the team that takes down the Flames, if any.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I think that just if anything, the Flames, what's going to cost them is goaltending, but they haven't had the recognition that they deserve all season. This is a 50-win team, and I don't think people really think of the Flames as, that kind of a powerhouse. But it almost speaks to their strength up and down the lineup if they've been doing it with questionable goaltending and they've had these results all season.
Like you're talking about the lineup. Let's just take a look a bit at the lines, and then we can move on to the next series. But first off, they have Johnny Hockey, Sean Monahan, and Elias Lindholm as a first line. Then you have Matthew Tkachuk, Michael Backlund, and Michael Frolik as a second line. Third line, you have Bennett, Jankowski, and James Neal. And finally, Mangiapane, who actually played really well in the first game, Derek Ryan, and Garnet Hathaway. Finally, on D, you have Giordano, Brody, Hannafin and Hamonic, and Oscar Fantenberg and Rasmus Anderson. But let's be clear, those last 2 Ds are not going to be that important, because your top 2 pairs are going to play most of the minutes, if not all.
Yeah, I mean, when you can ice a pair like that, like Giordano, Brody, and Hannafin and Hamonic, I think at one point you just kind of, you let the guys say, oh yeah, you're on the team, whatever, and then you sit them down on the bench, and that's where they're going to stay, because you can just ride these guys. And at the same time, the offense is kind of the same. It's they got 2 killer lines up front, and then a third line where if Neal gets going, look out, because Neal can score. He hasn't had the best season, but that's what they signed him for, is scoring. And if you could pick it up right now, then this is as good a time as any to be scoring. And like you said, they've got a energetic fourth line. I really don't see any holes in this lineup.
Yeah, me neither. So I think that concludes the wrap up for this first series, Flames versus Avalanche. I think I predicted in 5 games in my bracket. I don't know about you, Lou.
In my bracket, I put 6, but I'm starting to wonder if that was a good decision or not. I just feel like as good as the Flames defense is, maybe Colorado's monster line can turn it on for a game or two. But thinking back on it, maybe I'm putting too much stock in the Avalanche. I think 6 maximum, but I'd probably agree with you. I think they're going down in 5.
So now that we've covered the Flames and Avalanche, let's take a look at San Jose against Vegas. I'm just going to start off by saying that I feel like San Jose, this might be their actual last year, because I think they're getting old. They might lose Carlson, which is a big piece, and then like I said, everyone's getting old. You got Thornton, you've got Burns, although he's still putting up a lot of numbers, he's just gonna get older. And I just feel like if they want a chance, but then again, I feel like Vegas is really good. They lost last year. I feel like they kind of want to redeem themselves, even though it was like a Cinderella almost. And to that matter, I feel like Flower actually needs to bring his game up a bit to actually last year's, so they can actually have a chance at the cup. I remember putting them winning against San Jose in 6. Currently, the series is 1-1. I don't know what you think, Lou, but I think that it's going to finish in 6 games for Vegas.
I'd agree with you that Vegas is going to win. And you mentioned Fleury. I think that one of the underrated elements is Martin Jones actually going to play to his potential? Because this year he's been under 900, and that's not good enough. As you know, the confidence from your team comes from the goaltending out, and you want to know that your guy has your back so that you can play more free and not worry about maybe I can try this pass because if it gets intercepted, that's not the worst thing in the world and my goaltender's got me. And you want to have more confidence like that. I just don't think that Martin Jones can be trusted while he's playing as he is in a 7-game series. But at the same time, the defense needs to help him too. And Carlson has been injured. He looked pretty good in game 1. So that's very encouraging if you're a Sharks fan. But yeah, I'd have to go for Vegas. The other thing about Vegas is I feel like they're a more established team now because, as you mentioned, they're kind of a Cinderella story last year. But now they got established guys like Stone and Pacioretty. And it's not just that magic of these guys are playing above their potential. You got established guys that are really showing those kind of ragtag group of guys that this is how you play, this is how you win. So I feel like overall, the series is a lot of goaltending, but I would pick Vegas to win it in 7.
Yeah, I think those are good words. Like you said, Vegas. Either way, I think that Vegas wins. I got a bit worried at first when they lost the first game, but then after that, when they won the second one, I was like, okay, never mind. Vegas is going to win the series. But like you said, I think that goaltending is going to be pretty important, especially down the line. If any of these two teams want to win, they're going to have to count on either Jones or Fleury to make the big saves, like you said, to give the players confidence. And like you said, I feel like, you're thinking about Marchessault, William Karlsson, that is really good. And then they added Stone and Pacioretty. I just feel like this year is actually the year where they should actually go far. Last year they should have probably made it to maybe first, second round. And then this year have the chance to win the cup, not the inverse.
San Jose might know in the back of their mind that their time's running out here. I think they might look at a team like Los Angeles, for example, where this team was good for a long time, but then all of a sudden, oh wait, we're old, and everyone regresses. Every player is gonna regress, and I just feel like who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if San Jose next year is the new Los Angeles. Where they can't keep up with this modern game anymore.
Yeah, I feel like we might see a lot of trades for that team in the offseason, and then
just in passing, actually, what you're talking about. I think a lot of GMs make mistakes after a bad result in the playoffs. So you know how you say, oh, they might make trades in the offseason or whatever. If they lose in the first round, San Jose, and then they go out and try to just solidify even though they're on the downswing, I think this is where maybe they sign bad contracts. in free agency or they make bad trades, and then they actually solidify themselves as a bad team and not a good one. So they got to watch out for that.
Let's take a look at the other series. We've got Dallas against Nashville. For my prediction, I put Dallas in 6, just because I feel like Dallas has so much offensive compared to Nashville, and they also have Ben Bishop, who could also be their wild card in terms of like, if he plays as well as he did in the season, he could potentially steal this series. Whereas Rene has been shaky recently, and I just feel like that could be the downfall from the Nashville, even though people always expect them to make it far because they have so many like key pieces, Ryan Johansson, a strong 4 D-core with Subban, Yossi, and all that. I don't know what you think, but I said Dallas in 6.
Yeah, I think that I would have to have Nashville in 7. And the reason I say this is that, yes, Ben Bishop is a great goaltender, and he could definitely steal this series for them. And either way, I think it's going to be a tight, low-scoring series, and it's going to be grueling up until the end. But, I mean, the main reason that I think that Nashville is going to make it out of there is because, you know, although both of these teams aren't offensive teams, Nashville is quite considerably better on offense than Dallas, because although Dallas has those big stars, they don't have the they don't have the depth, the offensive depth, in order to back up those stars. And you see it in the numbers where Nashville has over 2.5 goals against, which again isn't amazing, but Dallas is in the 2.1s. So I think that scoring is going to make a big difference. Also, I think that, as you brought up, it's very important to look at whether Pekka Rinne is going to be Swiss cheese Pekka Rinne, or if he's going to be, you know, Vezina caliber Pekka Rinne. But I don't think that these teams are going to really make a huge push for the cup or anything. Like, I don't really believe in either of these teams. I just don't think that, you know, Nashville has the same presence as last year. I don't think that they've got the same sort of momentum. And I don't think that Dallas are just as experienced as they need to be in order to make it far into these playoffs. All right, now let's get on to Winnipeg and St. Louis. And I know that we're going to disagree on this one, so I'll start it off. I really believe in Jordan Binnington and what he's been able to do. I think that it's very reminiscent of Matt Murray and the Pittsburgh Penguins when they won their 2 cups back-to-back, and Matt Murray ended up taking the starting job from Marc-Andre Fleury. I just think that, you know, these young goalies that come up and that energize their team, and let's not, you know, sugarcoat things. I think Binnington coming up was the turnaround of the season for the St. Louis Blues. You know, there was 2 things. They fired their coach, and then Binnington came up, and he played amazing, and he took the starting job, and I think he really added to the confidence of the team, knowing that there's this young stud who's coming in, and he's just stopping the pucks, and he's making the stops that they need. And not only that, but the St. Louis Blues have made acquisitions. You know, people tend to forget that in the summer they got guys like, most notably Ryan O'Reilly, who he's great defensively. He wins you faceoffs. He also puts up points. He's easily one of the most underrated elite centers in the NHL. And, you know, they got guys like Tarasenko who can score. I really do think that this is St. Louis's series to win. And I put them in my bracket. I said St. Louis in 7, but now I think that they might even wrap it up in less games than 7.
So I'm definitely going to have to counter a few of those points. First off, I'm going to touch on Binnington. I think that his situation is a bit different than Murray in terms of, like, Murray had Fleury to push him to be good. Binnington has Jake Allen, which has been nothing but Swiss cheese in the past for this season. So yes, I think Binnington has earned some kind of a trust in being the first goalie for the St. Louis, but I don't think that it's the same scenario. The other thing I want to put in perspective is that Winnipeg. First of all, I put Winnipeg in my pool in 6 against St. Louis, so I think they're going to win. Why? I believe into the fact that if Laine can start scoring and tearing it up, that they can win this series easily because they have a supporting cast with Kyle Connor, Scheifele, Wheeler, big buff in back. They also have Hellebuck, which is also a great goalie. And I just feel like they have a well-rounded team, this big powerhouse. They've added a few pieces like Kevin Hayes. I just feel like they have a chance in at least going past St. Louis. I know they're going to have to wake up soon because they lost both games at home. And I just feel like they have to wake up like soon, really, really soon, because this series might end up being a 4-0 for St. Louis if they don't.
My question to you is Hellebuck the goaltender that we think he is? You know, like last season he was a lot better. He set the record for wins by an American goalie in the regular season, I believe. However, he hasn't been all of that this season, and at times really he's let in shaky goals. Now, I don't think that he's been necessarily shaky so far, but he hasn't been keeping them in games as much as you'd want, because it seems like, you know, in the dying minutes or everything, that's when a goal goes in, and that's when you need the key save. Whereas Binnington, he's just been money. So for me, I still stick with my pick. I think that Winnipeg's a very talented team, and also this series could go either way. So I'm not saying 100% St. Louis easily wins or anything like that, because Winnipeg is a formidable opponent. I definitely have my money on St. Louis.
Yeah, I have my money on Winnipeg on that one, but I don't know. I guess we'll have to see where it goes. I'm just going to say about Hellebuck, yes, he might not be the exact goalie we thought that he was, but you never know. Binnington can stop playing well anytime. You never know. Anything in the playoffs can happen. Now that we've done the West, let's take a look at the East with, right into it, Tampa Bay against Columbus. Now, I put Columbus in 6 in my bracket before the series started. But now that they're actually 2-0, I'm starting to think they might actually win 4-0. Because, first of all, they're playing so well against a supposedly powerhouse in Tampa Bay. Everyone was like, wow, 4-0 sweep for Tampa. That's going to be the easiest series. Like, they're going to be playing golf in the meantime that, like, everyone else is starting, like, doing their series. And I'm just thinking, like, Columbus is actually going to win this. You know, like, at first I was just doing my bracket and I was like, I'm going to make this as randomly as possible. Like, just go against what everyone is saying. And it's actually happening. And I'm like, Kucherov got a suspension. Point fought. Hedman is off his game. Like, all these stars are not used to this. They're used to putting up 6-7 goals a game. And they lost 5-1 last night. So then again, I put Columbus 6 for the series against Tampa. I don't know what you think, Lou.
I'll tell you what I think. First of all, let's start it out. I want everyone to take a minute and think back. Think about all the series that have been 2-0 in recent memory. What's the example that comes to mind of a team losing that series? Everyone right now should be thinking of Columbus and Washington. Columbus was 2-0 up, and Washington's not as good of a team as Tampa Bay is right now. Granted, Tampa Bay's not playing to their potential, but I think that Columbus might botch this again. And all Columbus have to do is keep playing like they are and keep frustrating Tampa. Right now, it doesn't look good for Tampa, but I can't bet on such a talented roster as Tampa to lose in the first round. I feel like they put together such an amazing series. Not only do they owe it to themselves to make it to the second round, third round, honestly, anything short of a Stanley Cup for Tampa would be falling short. But, I mean, let's be honest, Columbus shouldn't be 2-0 up right now. Like, by all accounts, Bobrovsky is not a winning goaltender in the playoffs. He's not won a single series. I think back to all the times where he dropped the ball against teams like Pittsburgh. I don't see it. I don't see it. I know that they're 2-0 down, but I still have to pick Tampa in 7.
You're talking about like a lot of stuff we didn't expect. Let me bring you back to something we didn't expect. Vegas making the playoffs. Winning the first round. Winning the second round. Winning the third round, and finally making it to the Stanley Cup final. What I'm trying to prove here is anything can happen in the playoffs. This season, yes, Kucherov put 128 points. How many points in 2 games? Yes, it's a short sample, 2 games. 0. Where is he going to be for the third game? On the bench. That's not where you want to see your big star Kucherov. You want to see him playing big minutes for you on the power play, which has not been working for them in the playoffs as of now. And I'm clearly seeing Columbus, like, I don't know if this is Tortorella's strategy or what, but like they're clearly getting the stars of the Tampa Bay Lightning off their game. Like I said, Point was fighting for like, you've never seen that guy fight probably ever. Hedman is not like the big core D-man that they're used to. And like, I just see Columbus actually, if they continue playing like they are, I'm saying they might actually sweep the Tampa Bay Lightning. And if that happens, people are going to be shocked. And also, Tampa Bay is going to be seen as the worst chokers of like the entire like last 10 years. Like they're going to be seen as like, oh my gosh, we put 128 points. Oh, this is so easy. We're winning 7-0 against teams, and then lose 4-0 against Columbus, who barely made it over Montreal. Like, imagine that scenario.
You call them chokers. However, Tampa Bay has been to the Stanley Cup final. This group knows what it takes to win. And let's not forget that Tampa Bay in the first game went 3-0 up. They were toying with their food. Now, Columbus came back in that game. But this is to illustrate that if Tampa sit back and they don't play to their potential, Columbus wins this series. However, I don't think it's Columbus winning the series so much as Tampa Bay losing it. Right now, their biggest enemy is not Columbus, it's themselves. Can they play to their potential? All they need to do is flip the switch. Here's an underrated storyline, because you mentioned Tortorella. I'm not a huge fan of Tortorella, but I think that if Columbus win this series, then Tampa Bay is being outcoached. Because you got these all-world players, but you need to know what makes them tick. And if the players aren't playing to their potential, is Tampa Bay being outcoached right now? I mean, I might be being stubborn with this one. I'm saying Tampa in 7.
Once again, I'm just going to have to disagree on you and put Columbus in 6. But I think that might actually be an angle, being outcoached. John Cooper being outcoached by Tortorella. But I just see, like, let's say that Columbus makes it past the first round. Like, if they can win against Tampa, it means they figured out a way to, like, identify themselves as what could beat Tampa. And I feel like if they can beat them and, like, shape their team into, like, what needs to be done, I feel like they can beat anyone. So I'm saying, like, if they win against Tampa, they might actually have a chance to go further than just the second round and maybe, like, later on. Because they have key players. I know in the last, like, few games for the season for them, it's not been ticking. But, like, if Duchesne, Zingle, Panarin, all those guys can work and, like, actually click, Bobrovsky on top of his game, like, they're a freaking amazing team. Like, I'm saying the sweep is possible. Like you said, nothing is done. But now they're going home, which should help them. The thing is, they can't be sitting on their backs now.
All right, straight into another one where I think we couldn't disagree more. However, I'm confident in this. I'm probably more confident in this than Tampa Bay. Toronto-Boston. Original 6 matchup. Rematch from last year. What more do you want? I'm saying Toronto in 7. Now, the reason that I believe that Toronto can pull this off, and let's be honest, a lot of people didn't even give Toronto a chance in this series. The reason I believe that Toronto Maple Leafs can beat the Boston Bruins is they have the star power to outscore and outplay the Boston Bruins. They've added Tavares, but not only that, they've addressed their defense by adding a guy like Muzzin. And let's not forget that the Maple Leafs were very close to winning the series last year. They had a lead going into the third period and they blew it. However, I think they've learned from it. And most importantly, I think that Anderson is playing well. I don't believe in Rask. I think that Rask is too inconsistent. Why not? Like, why is everyone so shocked that the Leafs have won game one? Because I don't think it's shocking at all. I think that the Leafs are a better all-around team. Like, look at their roster. They've got the talent. I'm going to pass it off to you. Why do you think Boston has a better chance in this than Toronto?
Let me just introduce by saying, by no means am I a Boston fan. And honestly, I probably like I like the Maple Leafs a lot more than Boston. But I don't believe in the Leafs winning. I'm seeing clearly, like, yes, I'm seeing, like, Boston, yes, they have a few issues in being, like, Chara, for example. He's getting old. I also see the Maple Leafs having, like, this really amazing team with Nylander, Marner, and Tavares. Muzzin also, and D. Anderson. Like, that's a great team. The only thing is, I feel like the Leafs have a kind of a reputation for choking. And not to offend any Leaf fan whatsoever, although I probably already have, but I think that Boston's going to win in 6. And I think that the first game served as a wake-up call for them. Because, as you Leafs fan know, the Boston Bruins, whenever they're woken up, the bear can strike hard. Like, last year, winning the Game 7, I'm pretty sure that hurt you. And I honestly believe it's going to happen again. Like, in 6, Boston, like, you can't disagree with a top line of Pasternak, Marchand, and Bergeron. But not only that, they also added Coyle, Johansson. They have McAvoy on D, who's pretty good. They also have Corrali, who's going to come back, I think, tonight for the game. I just think that Boston, you have those teams that are just opportunistic and they find a way to win. I just feel like Boston is that type of team. And to be honest, I put them as winning the cup. Just because I feel like they're on a good, like, they've had a few good years, but I just felt like this year was good. Although the first game put some doubts in my mind. To be fair, like, if the Leafs win, it's a Canadian team. I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, I wanted the Bruins to win. I don't care about the Bruins. I just felt like the Bruins had a good team. I'm just doing this, like, from a observing perspective. I'm not biased or anything. I'm just saying the Bruins. I feel like the Bruins are going to win, and I don't know what you have to say to that, and maybe I can counter after.
You talk about guys like Pasternak. Where was Pasternak during Game 1? Did he show up? I didn't really notice him. I didn't feel like he was the monster of last year, where the Leafs just didn't have an answer for him. And again, I go back to this thing where it's like the upgrades that the Leafs have made. Austin Matthews struggled last season. He had 2 points in that series. But now you got Tavares, who's going to man the shutdown line against the Boston Bruins monster line. And from what I've seen in Game 1, I have no reason to believe that Tavares can effectively do that. They don't even need to shut down that line. They just need to slow it down. Because without that identity line the Boston Bruins have, honestly, they're not the same team. People say, the Bruins, they almost talk about the Bruins like the Bruins are immortal. They don't strike me as the same kind of team that can just easily turn it on. Like, I think that the Leafs this year, they're poised. They're poised to finally slay the dragon. And at the end of the day, I think Boston fans, you won a lot of things. Right now, it's the Leafs' time. Okay, I'm saying the Leafs. They have their bottom pair is Gardner Dermott. Gardner Dermott as the bottom defensive pair. That says something. You know, they're a strong team. The only thing that's gonna sink the Leafs, really like sink them, I think, Anderson gets injured. Because let's be honest, Sparks is not good enough to win that series.
Yeah, that would be terrible for the Leafs. I'm just going to add on to, I think this comes back to Tampa as well. Both Tampa and Boston need to wake up. Like, they need to wake up if they actually want to win. And then again, I'm not biased or anything. I'm just saying, I think that Boston is the type of team that can just flip the switch on and win. Because you know how Pittsburgh used to, like, you know, they were playing Washington, and clearly I think people were seeing Washington as being a better team, but Pittsburgh always found a way because they were kind of like, it's the team they can win against the most. And I just feel like Boston is that with Maple Leafs, and I just feel like this year, if the Boston Bruins go back to their identity, and because, like, let's be real, the Maple Leafs actually played really well against the Boston Bruins, and they deserve to win that game. But if Boston goes back to their roots, and I guess we'll see in a few hours, I think that Boston can win and will win against Maple Leafs. But if Maple Leafs continue to play well against that top first line, shut down Torrey Krug, because he's actually a really big asset for the Boston Bruins, and if Nylander can be a really major player, I know we're going to talk a bit about it later, but I think that Maple Leafs, it's not going to be in shock if they win. It's going to be well-deserved, and they're going to have earned it. I'm just seeing Boston Bruins in 6 against the Maple Leafs.
All right, last thing about this series, and I think we can move on. So you talk about Boston going back to their roots. However, I think Boston are now in trouble because they realize they can't outskill the Leafs. Like, what's the Leafs' identity? It's skill, it's pace, and they're pushing it right now. Boston tried to out-Leaf the Leafs kind of in game 1, where they tried to play with skill, and they tried to, you know, be that kind of team. Now you say that they're going to go back to their identity, which is, you know, what's the Bruins' identity? It's like playing hard, breaking you down, right? Apparently they might start Backes. Now, I mean, no disrespect to the guy, but he's not fast enough to keep up with the Leafs. He was skating in the practice lines. You know, I think the Bruins are, honestly, they don't have their priorities straight, because the answer to your problems is not David Backes. Like, even Backes said that he had comments about how he's going to be a bruiser more than anything. He's not going to contribute in a way that's going to tilt the series in the Bruins' favor. I think if the Bruins lose in Game 2, then they might as well kiss their hopes goodbye.
That's a bold prediction, Lou. I'm just going to say this one thing. I don't know if you remember, Pastrnak got injured before the playoffs. And you were mentioning about Pastrnak not being the monster that he is. I'm just saying, is he still injured? Does that contribute to that? Because we all know Pastrnak as being this huge monster that scores like unbelievably amounts of goals. And as you said, Backes, I don't know if he's going to answer anything for the Boston Bruins problem, but I guess we'll see tonight. You Leafs fan better tune in for that game as well as this podcast. Last 2 final series, we have Washington against Carolina. I just want to mention real quick that I put them in my pool, or in my bracket, sorry, as winning against the Capitals. People might be surprised, but like I said, I wanted to do the most like rightward type of bracket. Like, if people are going left, I wanted to go right. So I chose Carolina. I believe it's in 7 against Washington. I know they lost the first game to Washington because of a great performance by John Carlson. I just think that Carolina is currently in a bit of like that Vegas Golden Knights Cinderella story. I just feel like they finally made the playoffs. They've got rookies in Aho and Svechnikov. Svechnikov got 2 goals. I just feel like they have no pressure to win whatsoever. They weren't even supposed to make the playoffs, like I mentioned, for the Dallas Stars. Like, they've got no pressure. I feel like that aspect might help any team that doesn't have any pressure. And I think that in the first game, Carolina actually gave Capitals a run for their money. And I just feel like if Carolina can step their game up a bit and control Ovi, as like you guys probably saw, there were a bunch of like videos showing Ovi alone against the goalie. They actually need to shut him down, as well as Carlson. And I just feel like as the series progresses, they're going to have to shut down some key players like Ovechkin. And I feel like Carolina, although they're probably going to die in the process, they could potentially win against Washington in a 7 series. Like I said, 7 games in.
Yeah, I think that picture that everyone's seen about Carolina and Ovechkin just on his own in the middle of the ice, that should be in like a guidebook of like how not to defend against Alex Ovechkin. Like, this is not a good idea at all. I think Carolina's going to fight valiantly. I think Carolina's going to, give a good effort. They're going to give the Capitals a run for their money, but in the end, I see the Capitals in 6. And the reason I see the Capitals in 6 is that the Capitals, not only do they have that playoff experience and the caliber of player that you need to win, they also have the liberty of playing like they want to play, because that pressure of we haven't won a Stanley Cup, it's off their shoulders now. And you see how they had all these 50-win seasons, never got there. Then when they're a little bit of an underdog team, they finally win it. I think that is a good illustration of how pressure can work against you. And so I would say that Washington is just going to be too much for Carolina to handle. And also, I have questions about their goaltending. Like, is Mrazek, because he's hot right now, and it's he's not a bad goaltender, I would say, but is he the goaltender that you need to stave off an offensive powerhouse like the Washington Capitals? I'm not sure.
I think how we can end this off. I just want to mention, like, maybe people are seeing a debate here for, like, does Ovi need to do a back-to-back to be considered as good as Crosby? Like, does he have to do that to prove that not only can he win a Stanley Cup, but that he can compete, and his team as well, for years and years, and not only, like, one cup? I just don't know if people are actually thinking about this. Like, do they put pressure on Ovechkin to win 2 cups? Is that going to affect his game? I know he scored a goal in the first game. Like, how important is he going to be in this second run for the cup for the Capitals? But then again, I'm putting my money on Carolina. I just feel like they're going to be underdogs and no pressure. I feel like they're going to win. So,
at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that Carolina are underdogs. So it's like, your logic is that because they're underdogs, they're gonna have this increased will to win and take down the big bad Capitals. Now, I'm not ruling it out of the equation, and you see how they came up from 3-0 to 3-2 in the first game, and they almost tied it up. Final piece I want to add to this conversation is Brain Holtby has always been playoff gamer. He's always been great in the playoffs, and I don't think that Carolina, as good as they are, we're full respect to them for getting into the playoffs. I don't think that they have the experience and they have what it takes right now in order to beat the Washington Capitals. But I think that's a good place to get into the final series of our playoff special, and this series is one that, again, it's highly contested. The New York Islanders against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, I'm gonna start off by saying I believe in the Penguins. I'm not sure if I still have that belief after seeing Crosby, Malkin so frustrated. And I've been doubting the Islanders all year. Like, are they actually this good? Or, are they kind of riding a high? Is Trotz that good of a defensive coach? And full respect to Trotz, I think he's a probably one of the best coaches in the NHL, or actually without question one of the best coaches in the NHL. But here's the thing. They went from not being able to keep the puck out of their net last season to being one of the best defensive teams. That's why I was all season thinking, this is really, I don't think this is sustainable. They've managed to shut Pittsburgh down. Shut their offense down. And guys like Barzal just pulling flashy plays. You have to have seen that goal in overtime. If you haven't, go watch it. Where Barzal just skates in, takes his time, hits the post, then Bailey puts it in, and, Nassau Coliseum just erupts. I picked the Pittsburgh Penguins in 7 in that series in my bracket, but I'm not too sure about that pick now. I think that the Islanders might take it.
Yeah, to be honest, I picked Pittsburgh as well. I think in 6 though, but I have a few questions after after they lost the first 2 games. I'm not really sure that my pick is validated anymore. I was last night I watched the game, and after they lost, I was actually thinking okay, are these veterans getting old? Is Crosby, Letang, Malkin, they've had a lot of injuries. Are those getting back to them? Are those coming back to haunt them? Could they potentially choke? How Pittsburgh usually knows how to turn it on, win a series against the biggest, baddest Capitals. Can they actually win against this supposedly easy team? But once again, I'm going to say this. If Barzal and Eberle can keep this up, I believe that they can beat the Pittsburgh, but I don't think they can go further than that. I just feel like Islanders just missing a few depth pieces, especially on D, to go farther than what they're going to go potentially this first round. But then again, I'm not counting out Pittsburgh whatsoever because they've came back in the past. They've actually won a cup by coming back. So you never know what can happen, like I said, in the playoffs. I'm just hoping Pittsburgh comes back because I don't really like the Islanders. I like Crosby a bit more. I'm just hoping that Gensel, Crosby, and Malkin are going to wake up because if not, then this could be bad for them.
Yeah, so, you mentioned Pittsburgh maybe not being able to turn it on as they could before. I think one thing that might be playing into that is they've played so much extra hockey over the past few years. They're always in the playoffs, and they made such long runs. I think, players like Crosby or Malkin and so on, they might have actually aged quicker because their bodies are just beaten down. And maybe you're seeing the result of that now where it's just they don't have that same just extra percentage of energy that it takes, But overall, I would say that whatever team comes out of this series might be at a disadvantage in the second round because I believe that Washington isn't going to have that much of a hard time getting past Carolina, whereas I think that if the Pittsburgh decide to turn it on, it's going to be a war until the very end. And so whatever team's going to come out, it's going to be battered and bruised. And so it's going to be interesting. Either way, we're going to keep you guys updated, and we're going to keep talking about the results that are coming in until we know who wins the Stanley Cup. Speaking of the Stanley Cup, who would be your final prediction to win?
So in my bracket, I had the Bruins facing off the Flames. Now, if I'm taking a look at the Bruins right now, I actually think that the Flames have a bigger chance than the Bruins of making it past the first round and winning the cup. Then again, I'm not giving the Bruins up, but I'm going to say as my final choice, even though my bracket says the Bruins, I'm going to go with the Flames. I just think they're too much of a powerhouse. I feel like people are going to underestimate them a bit, and I feel like that's going to serve them well, and I feel like the Flames are going to lift the cup, and we're going to see Gaudreau lift it this year.
I'll be honest. In the beginning of my bracket, I picked Tampa to win it because, all odds were that Tampa was going to keep playing like they have the potential to. However, I had either the Flames or the Blues were reaching the Stanley Cup final to face off against them. And, let's be honest, the Flames are a more complete team than the Blues. But again, goaltending matters so much in the playoffs, and if Binnington can hold it together, I don't believe that either one of Mike Smith or David Riddick can rival with him. And so, with it being a toss-up as to whether Tampa is going to be able to, rival, whether the Leafs are going to be able to, hold the Bruins in this position and be able to close it out, or whether, maybe the Capitals come out. I think it's wide open, but I'm going to go off the board here, and I'm going to say that the Blues are going to get their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. It would be interesting to see a Capitals repeat as well, and I think that's not out of the question either.
So let's take a look at the dark horse, the player that is just like no one expects to be that important for their team. I'm going to start ahead and say I put Tkachuk as Matthew Tkachuk as being my dark horse, because I think that people think that yes, he's important, but he's more of a support role. But we saw in the first game that he got 2 goals, and that if the Flames want to go far and potentially win the cup, they have to rely on those types of guys, and also potentially James Neal. I feel like that Matthew Tkachuk can get under other players' skin and change their game for the worse, and as well as put up numbers. So I just feel like he's going to be a really important part for the Flames into making a big run for the cup.
I think that's definitely a good pick, because people just think of Tkachuk as a guy who's just getting up in everyone's grill and just frustrating them. But not only is he that, but he's also a talented guy who can score, and you're already seeing it where his offensive output is really contributing to the Flames and their success. However, I have different picks. I have one, Svechnikov, because I think that you see him already with 2 goals in the first game. I think that if the Hurricanes are going to upset the Capitals, Svechnikov is going to have to be a big part of that, and he's going to have to score a lot of goals. The other thing that I was thinking is Nylander, because Nylander has been, dogged on all season by the Maple Leafs and the Maple Leafs fan base, most specifically, for, holding out on his contract and everything. He's been plagued with a low shooting percentage, and just overall in the first month or so, without that training camp, he wasn't on his game. However, right now, I think in a albeit decreased role, he's going to be a problem, because he's skilled, unbelievably skilled, and he can really bring it to the Bruins and be an elite scorer in a diminished role, which is going to cause problems because he's not going to be matched up against the toughest opposition. He's already got a goal. I would expect Nylander to really tear it up these playoffs.
Yeah, I think those picks are really good. Like you said, they're going to be important to their teams if they actually want to go far. Next up, we've got the choker, the guy that's going to cost their team the series. For me, obviously, I think this pick is going to be not what people would expect, but I put Cooch as being my choker, because I think that if he sets the example that he's currently setting, the team, Tampa Bay, is not going to be able to go far, because he's supposed to be their leader, their 130-point guy, yet he's not going to play the next game, and he's also not playing like he should.
I think that's a fair pick, but my pick would be Rask, because like I said, I don't believe in Rask and his consistency, and not only that, I think he's kind of a crybaby, and he doesn't have his mind in the game, and he doesn't get his emotions under wraps. I really think that it's gonna cause the Bruins, because then it's like, who's our guy? Is Halak able to step in and be the bona fide starter that we need? So I would have to go for Rask.
Finally, we've got the same pick for a playoff hero, the guy that could potentially be so on fire that could steal a series, potentially steal like more than one game, because we chose Ben Bishop. I'm going to let you talk about his stats first, and then I'm going to add on.
Ben Bishop, .934 save percentage. Already that speaks for itself. But also, let's not forget, he was a playoff hero for the Tampa Bay Lightning when they make it to their Stanley Cup Finals. He has a .927 save percentage in the playoffs in his career. That's 37 games, 37 career playoff games. He's a big body, 6'7", and I really believe in his ability to be that rock that the Dallas Stars need.
Let me ask you this one thing. What if Ben Bishop was to steal the cup? Meaning that he would steal basically most of the games and then leading to like stealing series and then potentially winning the cup. What if that would happen? Do you think that's even feasible with a guy like Ben Bishop with, like you said, a .927 average?
I think that it's not likely, just considering all of the offensive juggernauts in the NHL right now. But if I had to pick one guy to do it right now, it would have to be Ben Bishop. So it's not impossible. Is it likely? No. But like you said, playoffs are stupid. Crazy things happen, and crazier things have happened. And so I wouldn't count him out. All right, guys. Well, I think that's a good place to end it off. We know for a fact that we're going to be watching the NHL playoffs, and we're going to keep you updated on what's going on across the league. My name is Louis.
My name is Tyler, and we're looking forward to seeing you down in the comments section. Subscribe. Thank you for listening. Until the next one, peace.